Dawson Rider with you.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here with my review for the DX Converting Wrecker Zord from Power Rangers Beast Morphers. This is Gold Rangers main Zord. Much like Red, it has multiple different modes. You have the vehicle mode right here, and then you maximize. Well, no, then you go to the Beast mode, and then you have the Robot mode, and there is also a special combined mode with Silver, which we'll be showing off. And then we'll top off the video with a look at the Ultrazord combination. And of course, if you could tell by the title, we will be taking a look at it compared to the Go Busters version. So taking a look at it, I mean, I've never been too huge on this mode, but I think that the toy honestly mostly looks fine. I really don't have too much of a problem with it. We'll get into the differences here in a minute with the Japanese version, but for what it is, I think it feels fine. It feels solid. There's some of these in the Beast Morphers Zord line in general that have felt kind of wonky, a little bit loose, but most of the vehicles have been pretty solid, and I think this one stands up with that. Like, it doesn't feel too cheap. It feels like a solid build. I think it looks nice. I think it's got most of the core details you need. There's some stuff missing here or there, but for me personally, nothing too huge to write home about. It can do the most exciting thing, which is roll, which is super exciting. All the wheels roll and function and stuff like that. You got the little crane up here. Let's go ahead and take a look at it compared to the Japanese version, which is right here. You can see it's got a little bit more vibrant paint in some areas. Oops, I came off kilter there for a second. And stuff like that. Some different details and stuff. But honestly, there's a couple of them that are pretty comparable, and I'd say this is one of them. I do notice the gold details there, but I'm going to be honest, that's not a huge deal breaker for me. It's kind of a difficult one because they both have that long crane action going on. But there are some differences, but I'm going to be honest, I don't notice that many of them. I think most of the core, like, missing paint details are, like, minor and stuff like that. Like, you have that here. The thing I kind of noticed the most about it is just that it looks a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more shiny, especially with the gold plastic here. I think it looks a little bit better with that. But other than that, I don't think there's too huge of a difference for me that I'm really that upset about. Sometimes there's certain ones where there's clearly something missing, like there'll be a section and it'll make it look really off, but I think these are pretty comparable. Let's go ahead now and start transforming it into its Mantis, quote-unquote, mode. So there we have the Mantis Zord. Just, it's kind of interesting of note, the transformation remains very much largely the same as the Japanese version, except for this bit here, where you actually have to remove these and place them differently so that this is level with this. Otherwise, you have him tilting up, and you end up with a lot of this action, which is kind of obnoxious, which is kind of interesting. It makes it a little bit less seamless, in my opinion, but I don't know how they think this is a Mantis, to be honest. Like, I don't understand any of the logic behind it, but I mean, I guess they think, are these the Mantis's arms? And it's just got like a really fat body? Like, I don't get it. Like, I can kind of see how these look like Mantis arms a little bit, but how do you explain this beetle body that's just beetle battle base? How do you explain that? Just, I don't get it. Like, I can sort of see parts of it, but then other parts of it just kind of lose it. But overall, I think this looks okay. I don't think that this holds up the best in this mode for me. It doesn't really feel as stable, which kind of bothers me a little bit. Just taking a quick look at it compared to the Japanese version, I think there's a little bit more of a clear difference here. I think the gold really stands out here more. I mean, just in its vibrancy and amount, because you're missing a little bit there. That's where you kind of notice it a little bit. Although I don't think, you know, most kids aren't going to notice it, and especially if you don't have them side by side, I don't think it's that huge of a deal, but there's definitely a difference. I think that this one feels a little bit more solid overall with the transformation and has a little bit more things in place to keep it secure. And I also kind of like that this is a little more seamless and you don't have to break these off in order to get it to be like seamless, because when I was practicing with this, I was like putting this in, I'm like, okay, I did this one, why isn't this one working? And I kept forgetting that I had to do this part. Like, that's like a minor nitpick, but it just seemed kind of unnecessary to me. But yeah, I think this one definitely wins in this category for me in this mode. This one's not terrible, but I think this just looks overall more standout if you're going to be displaying it in this mode. Okay, now let's go ahead and get it into the actual Megazord mode, one of the main events. And there you primarily have the Striker Megazord. I think this does look really cool. Actually, I don't want that out yet. I mean, you're gonna want that out when we do the combined mode, but I mean, you can have it out, but I think it's best to just put it away for now, to be honest. But I like the way that this looks. I mean, I like the design in general. That always pushes forward. But I think that the toy feels very solid. A complaint I had about the Racer Zord is that the other two modes felt fine, but the main Megazord mode felt a little wonky, both in proportion and just kind of in general feel when you were messing around with it. It felt weird and kind of cheap, but I think this one is a much improved version. I mean, it's not the same toy, but you know what I mean. Like, it feels a lot more solid. It looks a lot more solid in my opinion. Outside of the head feeling a little bit stout, like he doesn't have enough of a neck, I think that the proportions on it are pretty well done. I'm really not too upset about anything about it. I'm pretty pleased with it. It feels solid, feels much more like a more solid quality toy. Like, if I were to recommend between this and the Racer, if you just wanted to get one, I would definitely say this based on this mode, because I think it looks cooler. For the weapons, you take them off and you can actually put them in weapon modes. So you have kind of like a spear mode here, or spear weapon mode. And then you also can do like a blaster version, not like an evil version, just like a blaster like this one. So you got that. So you can do that with just like the other one, and that's kind of neat. And then you can also store them on there, which we're going to be doing in just a second. In fact, actually, let's go ahead and get that ready. That's something you'll probably do with the combined mode. Oh, that popped out. I'll fix that later. But that's something you'll do with the combined mode. But for now, we're going to get it ready for the combination. So basically, you're just going to be placing it on here, just like the other one, where you just kind of place it here so it flushes better, so it's, you know, not sticking out like that randomly, which is nice, but it's kind of annoying. I kind of like the seamless version better, where you can just slide it back and forth and you don't have to take it out, mainly because one of these pegs is a little bit tighter, which is kind of obnoxious to work with. But let's go ahead and quickly compare it to the Japanese version before we move on to the combined. Okay, here we have him next to Buster Hercules, the Hercules! Here we have him next to the Japanese counterpart. I think they both have their pros and cons, but honestly, they're pretty even for me. Like, this one is a little bit more streamlined in some ways, and I like the way that the helmet looks a little bit more on this one. It doesn't have a neck like this one. I mean, both of them are neck lacking, but the fact that this one's a little more slender makes it look a little less weird. It's got a little bit more vibrant of a paint job, but I like this one better because I think it looks a little bit more accurate in some instances, and I like the kind of general build of it, even though I think this one has its moments. As I mentioned, with the design of this, I like how you can just swing them around and you don't have to bother taking them off. It's not a huge deal, but it just kind of annoys me a little bit, because part of what I liked about some of these mecha was how seamless a lot of the transformations were and how everything just kind of worked nicely, and that just kind of takes away from some of the seamless nature of the transformation. But overall, I think that they're pretty equal for me look-wise, but just in different ways. Like I said, I think that this one looks a little more accurate, kind of looks a little bit less weirdly proportioned, but I do like this one still. I think it has its moments too, and I think it looks solid there. But let's go ahead and take a look now at the combined mode with silver. That was a long transformation. So here's the combined mode. I think it looks pretty solid, very simple, easy to do. I mean, pretty much all you do is take this section out and use it as a gun and then snap this on. It uses the exact same mechanism of sort of just pinching it between the arm there, but I think it looks pretty cool. Oh, almost forgot. How could I forget this mode? There we go. I forgot that bit. Classic me. But there we go. And again, I think that the sort of bulkier nature of it really makes it look a little bit more cool. It makes it look a little bit more cool, which I really dig. I think it's really a neat formation. Let's go ahead and also take a look compared to its Japanese counterpart. So we got them back to back. I think in this instance, even though the other ones were almost even for me in a lot of ways, I prefer this one. I think this one just looks a little bit cooler. This one just looks so over encumbered, and then you have this just kind of hanging down so much, and this one actually handles the proportions of that better, so it's actually not just hitting the ground, which is kind of nice. So yeah, in terms of these ones, I actually like this one a great deal better in terms of just the general look. I mean, yeah, you do have a little bit more details going on over here, but just in terms of the general proportions, I think that this one looks a lot cooler for the US version, and I would be more inclined to actually display it in that mode, because I'm usually not displaying it in that mode. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Alright, now on to the main event. Let's go ahead and transform into the Ultrazord. Hope you don't mind, I'm going to start from the Beast X Megazord as far as the base of that. Okay, and here we have the Ultrazord. I'll say overall, look-wise, I think it looks really nice. It looks really impressive. I do really like the proportions on it. I think it's a little bit more accurate to the show and the general suit than the Japanese version, which again, I'll bring in here in a minute. I'm actually going to compare it to the basic version first, just because it's kind of hard to get everybody in here. That's what, a lot of Megazords are like that. But I really do like the look of it. I like the slightly more slender look to it. Like I said, it's a little bit more accurate. I think it looks very cool, very impressive. There's a couple mechanisms that I like a little bit better. This is kind of a small thing, but the gorilla head there on top snaps on much more securely, and I really like that. Same thing with the feet. The pegs on it are very solid, which I really appreciate. A problem I always had with Great Go Buster was like or Great Go Buster O or whatever, was that these would always slide off very easily, so I appreciate the more secure things on that. Like with the Beast X Megazord on its own, you do get a little bit more articulation options. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm just going to kind of do a pan and not mess with that too much because this guy is very unstable. Maybe it's just mine. Let me know, you guys, if you have this or any of them, or the Beast X and not Ultrazord or whatever, but are your guys' that unstable? Because mine is. I just realized this kind of snapped out a little bit. There we go. But I don't want to mess with it too much because in particular, as I mentioned in my Beast X Megazord review, this is very loose, the mechanism on this one. This one's kind of okay, but this one's always sliding out. I don't know what it is, just something about the peg on mine or something, but it's very unstable, feels very lanky, which is obnoxious. As I mentioned in Beast X Megazord's review, it feels like I'm trying to hold together like a popsicle stick figure that's trying to dry while being glued together. So I do like that it's a little bit more mobile, a little bit more slender, but it definitely feels cheapish. That sounded kind of like sheepish, and it also just feels like lanky. Like I feel like every time I try to move it, something pops off and it's really obnoxious. Before we bring in the Japanese version, here it is really quickly just next to, this was the basic version that's just, you know, all together. It has lights and sounds and stuff. I think that, just like Beast X, this actually has the most accurate sculpt in terms of being the most slender, but obviously you're missing a lot of paint, no transformable, but this has no, you know, lights and sounds and stuff like that. But these aren't really the best, but I just did want to highlight that they have pretty interesting sculpts, which is kind of neat. But now let me go ahead and really quickly cut away to having the Japanese version in here. Alright, so here we have the two next to each other. Obviously two very different approaches in a lot of ways. It's kind of funny, I was thinking about it. They almost have these trade-offs where like mechanisms that are more secure on this guy are less secure on this one, and vice versa. This one feels a little bit more overall solid. It definitely has problems with things coming loose and stuff like that, but not as much as this one. Like, when I moved this guy around, this slipper kept popping off. This one, not this one, but this one. But that was about it. With this one, it feels like the whole thing is on the verge of collapse, like an ill-made tower, which is kind of obnoxious. And this guy is definitely down with the thickness. Like there's just a little bit more to him there. He looks a little bit more busy. I think overall for accuracy and look-wise, I actually do like this one a little bit better in some ways, but this one's a little bit more stable. For me, a little bit more easy to deal with. I had a lot more fun transforming this guy and the others in preparation for all these reviews because they weren't falling apart on me or feeling, you know, like they were about to, not break, but just fall apart every time I tried to do something, which was kind of obnoxious, but there's kind of the difference for you. As for a wrap up for this review, this guy's wobbliness really has nothing to do with Gold's mecha itself. I really do like Gold's. I really like Striker Zord. I like it a little bit more than Red's. I don't think it feels as weird. So I can definitely recommend checking that one out if you're a fan. As for the Ultrazord formation, like I said, I think it looks good, but it's very, very wonky. Anyway, that's about it for this one. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and of course, don't forget to climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for all my videos. Thanks guys, Dawson Ryder, signing out.